Alright guys, coming up in today's video, the dream of home ownership is alive and well, and with that come a lot of mistakes when first-time home buyers jump in the market. We're talking about the 10 biggest mistakes you could be making when jumping into home ownership, coming up next. Pow! Alright guys, Michael Jakobczak here, and it's a beautiful day, so I'm doing a video outside. Now, we're covering the top 10 biggest mistakes first-time home buyers make when jumping into the market. These are very crucial. You don't want to be making these because it's going to slow down your process, and you want to streamline it because in a very competitive market like in Toronto, you definitely want to have all your T's crossed and I's dotted before jumping in. So starting off with number one is the biggest mistake that I always get when I'm talking to new potential clients. They call me, they're excited, they want to look at a property, and that's where they're going wrong. They haven't talked to the bank, they're excited, I get it. Everyone wants to start actually shopping around for those properties, getting inside, see what you like, what you don't like. But bottom line is, like I said, to me, you should be first talking to the bank, getting qualified, making sure you understand your budget you're working with, because other than that, you won't be setting yourself up to be successful. Because what happens if you start looking at stuff and you find out your budget is much lower, even by 25 or 50,000, the properties that you're looking at could range from that price range could drop dramatically of the quality of properties that you're getting. So it's one of my very important first things that you should be doing is obviously touching with the bank. All right, coming to number two, and it plays right in hand with number one when you're getting qualified with the bank, is understanding your credit score and knowing where you stand, because this will, depending on where you stand with your credit, is going to dictate where the bank puts you in terms of interest rates and then what you can qualify for. So having an understanding of where your credit is, your beacon score, is going to be very crucial when you're going out and shopping around. Now, obviously, I wouldn't suggest constantly pulling your credit because it does get affected, but I always say once a year, pull your credit. I usually do it on my birthday. It allows me to make sure that everything that is reported on there is up to date and there's no issues or stuff that's inaccurate that's going to cause my score to drop. So understanding where you are, and like I said, once you talk to the bank or a mortgage broker, and understanding your credit score is going to play into finance options. Moving forward on number three is having high expectations. Now, everybody wants all the whistles and bells when it comes down to owning your first property or even any property. But bottom line is understanding that depending on your budget, you can't have everything in the world. Everyone wants to have the 2-car garage, the pool, the high-end appliances, the hardwood floors. But bottom line is, at the end of the day, it may push your budget way out of loop. And that property probably does exist, but it's probably way more expensive than you can afford. So you definitely don't want to have too high expectations, because bottom line is, depending on your budget, when you start shopping around, you'll see what's out there. When you're working with a buying agent, they'll be able to show you that in your price range, this is what's the going rate of the type of properties that you can buy. All right, coming to number four is not taking into factor the resale value. Now, what I mean by this is, chances are your first property that you own is going to be totally different than the last property you own, or your dream home that you work your way up to is going to be much different than the first property you bought. So you want to keep in mind when you're buying that although this is your first property and it's a big deal, you do not want to end up buying something that when you go to resell is going to hurt the value for whatever reason. What I mean by this, it's like when you buy the biggest house on the street, in theory you should be buying the smallest houses, because the factors are, the houses around you will bring your property value up. If you're buying the biggest one, you're relying on all the other property values to come up, and at some point someone to pay a premium for your big house on that street. Another good example would be when people convert 3 bedrooms into 2 bedrooms in one giant room. Now, although you might be a single couple or a single person, you don't need 3 bedrooms. Chances are, when you do that, unless you're going to convert it back, it's going to hurt your resale because people are going to come look at that and say, no, it's only a 2 bedroom, even though you could convert it back. So something to keep in mind, resale factors. All right, number 5's biggest mistake is working directly with listing agents. I know what you're thinking. You're like, hey, I'll just work with the listing agent. I'll get a better deal or whatever it is. Now, this topic, you could talk about it on so many different levels, but a huge mistake to be doing this because bottom line is you need your interests best at heart and not someone else's. And what I mean by this is the listing agent, when I'm listing a house and I have a client, I could know my client for 20 years, 10 years, whatever, and I'm listing their property. You come off the street and try to put an offer together, you're not getting a deal. I spent a lot of money on marketing, so I'm not dropping my commission just because you're coming in directly and I could potentially get, more money even if I drop my commission on your side. That's not thing. But bottom line is, what happens if I overpriced by 5%? And at some point, agents can manipulate and show you sales in the area that is going to justify their price. Having a buying agent get your interest and own your interests is going to be very, very, very important. Because like I said, if we're overpriced by 5%, and even if I drop by 1%, at the end of the day, you're still overpaying by 4%. So this is very important that you factor in and interview a bunch of buying agents before working with one directly and move forward with them moving on. All right, coming to number 6 is relying on online estimates for different appraisals of your property or properties that you're trying to buy. The thing is with these online estimates, they go on algorithms and it's not true resale value. So it's the same thing with when you're looking at your appraisal value with the city for city purposes taxes, it's going to be much lower and this is not true value. So what you want to be doing is, like I said, which brings us back to the last mistake, is work directly with a buying agent so that when you see a property that you are really in love with and want to submit an offer, they can pull the true value of what stuff should be going for in that area. All right, number 7's biggest mistake is not understanding your financing options. Now, most of the time, what I find is a lot of first-time home buyers, if they do go to the bank, they go to the bank they've been banking with for ever, and then they ask what their interest rate is, and they get an interest rate, and then they're content with that, which is fine. But to me, it's all about working smarter, not harder. So to me, what I would be doing is, on top of maybe talking to your bank that you bank with, maybe you have a good relationship with them, but you also talk with a mortgage broker. Now, the difference with this is the bank may have 1, 2, or 3 boxes to potentially help you out and give you a certain percentage on your interest, but a mortgage broker has 10 boxes, so they have potential to more options. And like I said, they get paid if they close the deal. They're commission based. It's offered on the lending side most of the time. And to me, factor in, like I said, if you could save even a fraction of an interest on a point, at the end of the day, it could be tens of thousands of dollars in the long run of interest. So it's very important to speak with different potential brokers to understand where they're at and what they're offering, and at the end of the day, to save you money. All right, coming to number 8 is a sad one because it's not falling in love with properties. And what I mean by this is, I know it's exciting to go look for that perfect property, and then you potentially find it and you absolutely fall in love with it. Now, you may be asking, like, why is that so bad? Well, in a competitive market like Toronto, the one property that you find that you fall in love with may not be the property you end up buying. And it's understanding that you may not be buying the properties that you submit offers on if it's a very competitive market, and you need to be open to new possibilities if you miss out on that one property. It's very important not to fall in love with every property that you see or just the properties that you're looking at. Coming to number 9 is not having a property inspected. Now, this is a huge no-no because even if a property appears to be very, very in prestige condition, there's many factors that you may not be able to tell by just walking through the property. So hiring someone to properly, walk through the property, crawl through those crawl spaces, to look at every possible angle that they can to give you a full scoop of the property. Because bottom line is, you don't want to be buying something and then finding out later on that you got to spend all this money fixing issues that you could have addressed, one, during the inspection period, or two, just walked away from it if it was too big of a project to jump on. So you just want to be aware of what you're getting yourself into, and a property inspection will give you a big scope of what's going on. And you got to remember, these property inspectors, that's all they do every day. They've seen almost every aspect of different issues in houses and what to keep your eye on when walking through properties. It's very important. All right, coming in at number 10, last but not least, is understanding the closing costs associated with buying a piece of real estate. And what I mean by this, it's not just all about your down payment, your deposit on the property. It's understanding that at closing you might have fees such as lawyer fees, appraisal fees, land transfer tax, so different types of taxes. All this adds up, and it could be tens of thousands of dollars depending on the value of the property that you're buying. But having an understanding of this going into this will allow you to budget, so make sure you can close on that property at the end of the day. So this is very important to understand the hidden costs associated when buying a piece of real estate. All right, there you have it, guys. The 10 biggest mistakes I see first-time home buyers making. Hopefully you don't make any of these after this video. If you like, comment, share, do all those good stuff. Maybe you know some other big mistakes, put them in the comments below. I'd love to hear them. I'm gonna go jump in this pool before the weather turns on us. I'll catch you in the next one though, guys. Take care.